All right, good evening, everybody. It is April 27th, 2026. I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Willington School Building Committee to order at 7 p.m. Members present are Jeremy Brothers, Adam Delonis, Adam Burr, myself, James Marshall. We have Selectman McCoo and Superintendent Stevens. And online, it looks like we have John Tian and Lisa Eaton. And we have some ability to see the our alternates. So I'm going to make a motion that we seat both John Tian and Lisa Eaton this evening. Second. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Jeremy? Aye. Thank you. Lisa, John, you can hear us, right? Respond. Now that I've said that.
Yep.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, John. Thank you. You guys are both seated tonight. All right. Moving straight along to item 2, community forum Q&A. Public participation is encouraged. Speakers are encouraged to utilize this opportunity for dialogue with the committee constructively and will be limited by appropriateness, staying on topic, and maintaining decorum. And I just ask that you identify yourself for the record if you're willing to speak. Start in the room. If there's any interest. Go for it, Peter.
97 Trask Road. So at the last meeting I attended, week before last, we had information from their OPM that deadline the community thought it was facing in June for referendum may not be the case. That it could be a fall referendum. And that our reimbursed numbers were would not used as our legislators shared with us at the beginning of the project a year ago. Is there an update on that?
Yeah, there's an agenda item specifically for that in presentation by the OPM. So you'll get a lot more information on that.
They're on forward to that. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody online? Going once. Going twice. Well, I do see Peter Bacon, who's just joined us. Peter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening. All right, so now we have seven seated. Good. All right, so we'll move right along. Next up on the agenda is item 3, approval of minutes from our April 13th, 2026 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
That's an addition where that there's an error.
Well, hold on. Let's first. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes from April 13th, 2026. We can make discussion, make edits.
Oh,
Okay. Do I have a second?
sure.
Anybody?
Vote, but I can second.
Is that actually okay?
I can literally can. I can make a motion and I can second. I just can't vote.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've been moving second. Discussion. Adam.
Page 2. There is right there to it's in the drawer, actually repairs. It should be Mr. Twelve instead.
Yeah. I have no objections. I wasn't here, so I'll refer to you guys. All right. Any other comments? Other than, I'll just say thank you guys for running such a complex meeting in my absence. That's great. Good job, Adam. Good job, everybody. Thank you, Lisa, for the minutes. So we'll say all those in favor of approving the minutes with the comment noted. Aye. Aye. Who was that online?
John saying aye.
Aye.
Peter?
If these are the minutes from the 13th, I'll have to abstain because I was not there.
All right. That's beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Right along. Chair report. So I'll keep this brief because we got a very deep agenda tonight. The next three items in your packets, are just for your records, they're the, meeting minutes of the most recent working group meetings that we hold with the Beckton team. Just for your knowledge and records, although all of the items have been discussed with this group at large. And we'll continue to make that a habit moving forward so that everybody on the committee is in the loop. And then secondly, and our present speak community forum at the start of the meeting tonight is a good segue into that. So we next up, I'll just introduce it a little bit. Under old business, you guys, while I was away last week, had over the past several weeks, we've got new information from the Office of Grant Administration. We have been chasing this information since the committee was formed back in February, right? Ooh, 2 months. Back in February, because as everyone is aware, we were under the awareness of potential legislation that would kick in. That was approved prior to the forming of this committee that could change the reimbursable, the square foot cost reimbursement rates for new school construction that would kick in June 30th. So this committee's been working very diligently to stay ahead of that deadline while we tried to get further clarity and detail about what that regulation actually means. As of 2 weeks ago, perhaps, give or take, we did finally get clarity in the Office of Grant Administration, and it has some significant impact on our timetable and our ability potentially to extend this duration beyond the June 30th date without any costs, without any significant cost implications. But I'll let Scott kind of take it from there.
Would you like
We'll
me
move
to
on.
try and share my screen, or do you guys have it loaded up and I can just say next slide, whichever?
Why don't you try sharing, because I'm not even connected to the Zoom.
Okay.
So we'll move on to old business schedule review, OGA regulations, maximizing cost per square foot for reimbursement.
Oh, it's advanced. Perfect. Got it on there?
You minimize, or if you pop that up, yeah, kind of expand the screen. There we go.
So this is part of the full slump. That is full screen.
Yeah, we had the participant window blocking out of it before. Good.
Okay, good evening, everyone. You know, as Jim outlined, we've been really following this very closely for really a number of months since we were first brought on board, and we've been following it prior to that. You know, I would encourage the committee, if you've got questions as we go through this presentation, you know, please feel free, you know, before I move on. But hopefully this slideshow will both to this committee and to the public give a clarity to what sort of the mystery's been of this proposed language that Jim alluded to from the Office of Grants Administration. So there was a proposed state regulation issued. It was this section. I won't necessarily read that, but it was for applications submitted after this upcoming July 1st, 2026, that the maximum allowable cost per square foot shall be the sum of the cost per square foot listed in a chart that they provided of this subsection for each grade being housed at the school building, divided by the total number of grades. So the next slide, I have that chart that they published. So the chart that they published shows 3 different levels of allowable cost per square foot. For grades K through 5, $494 a square foot, grades 6 through 8, $520, and 9 through 12, $523. So because you're a K through 8 facility and you actually bridge 2 of those costs per square foot, you take the 6 grade levels K through 5 times 494 times the square footage they list, plus 3 grade levels for grades 6 through 8 times 520, you divide that by the total number of grades, 9 grade levels, and you come up with $503 per square foot. So based on the new proposed regulation, the state was saying that your building will give you $503 per square foot. So the question was, well, why does that matter? What was the confusion that this created? Well, currently in the state of Connecticut, the majority of all new school construction projects, total project budget, everything including hard costs, soft costs, site, fine, all of those legal fees, testing agencies and lab fees, all of those, typically it comes in at about $900 to $1,000 a square foot. So when the committee rightfully saw this, and at that point in time, the state hadn't really told us what that $503 in your case represented. Is that total project budget? Is that all hard and soft costs? If so, it appeared that the state was saying, we're only going to fund about 50% of total project costs moving after July 1st of this year. Certainly a significant concern, and rightly so identified by the committee. So the goal when we were brought on and the architect was brought on was to bring forward a proposed project with a cost prior to July 1st of this year. So that could be filed with OGA and come before their stipulated deadline. But again, they hadn't provided guidance yet. They said it was coming. They kept saying, we're going to issue it, but they hadn't told us what that $503 represented. So on March 25th, actually, so yeah, about a month ago now, Pound received the following clarification from the state. The new regulation, 10287C30, on cost per square foot. Construction cost is defined as the cost for major group elements A through F is classified in the Uniform at 2 elemental classification for building specifications, cost estimating, and cost analysis, including costs for general conditions, general requirements, overhead profit associated with such elements. It does include soft costs. So what does that mean? I know that sounds very confusing, A through F and all these specifications and all those things. So, really what does that mean? Well, Uniform at 2 is an estimating format that's organized by building elements. And A through F pertain only to the building. So really simply put, it's everything from the exterior walls in. It doesn't include furniture and equipment. Those are typically soft costs. Doesn't include all site costs. Doesn't include OPM fees, the architect's design fees. Doesn't include contingencies. Doesn't include legal fees, testing agencies, survey, all of those soft costs, all those below the line. Those are all below the line on the Uniform at A through F designation. So that's good news. So it's not total project budget, but it's building only, exterior walls in. So this is, and again, apologize, a little hard to see, but if people want to pull this up later and take a look at it, I just wanted to include this so everyone could see this format. This is a copy of the page of the Uniform at 2 element for building estimating A through F. So this defines, again, all of those components, includes selective demolition inside a building's walls, selective demolition. However, if you are demolishing the entire building, that is below item F. I think that's G or H for total building demolition. So total building demolition is not included in these costs. It's just A through F, exterior walls in. So what we did then is we took a look at some building cost history that we have. We worked with Tecton and Jeff, pulled out a few. We didn't have any K8 projects, but we had a number of K5 projects. You can see on the name of the schools, their grade ranges, K5s, K6s are at the top, the years they were bid. What we did then is we took a look at what those costs were to that uniform classic elements of A through F, or the building costs only. In this first line of numbers, you see are those costs per square foot. These projects were bid anywhere from March of 2019 through January of 2025 with the resulting numbers. The blue line represents escalating them to today's dollars. So we looked at historical escalation for that period from when they were bid, escalated each project individually up to its today's cost. Now, again, remember, right now the state is saying 503 as far as today is concerned. When you put a project in after July 1st in 2026, we're only going to give you a maximum of 503. So you can see that these projects would range in today's dollars from $444 up to $494. Again, every project is a little different. Every community educates their students a little differently. There may be spaces that are a little grander and a little different than the way that Willington might propose to have a building to educate their students. So, every building is different. The green line then represents an escalation to 2028, or what we thought might be kind of a midpoint of construction. And again, you can see, except for the Cheshire one, which is 539, all of those are kind of right at or below the 503. So what this tells us is, some number of different architects, number of different communities. Again, this was just one sampling of dollars. And I think there was some logic to what the state put forward, that number, that would be utilized to evaluate your project, in this case, the 503, is a reasonable number. And, more importantly, when you know what your construction estimate is going into a project, you work with Tecton in this case, you work with your architect, and you say, this is our budget, and we're going to design to this budget. So again, the concern that the state, by this proposed regulation, was only going to, fund half the total project cost was unfounded. When we got this clarification, it's the state is putting that parameter for building costs only. And it makes, again, a lot of sense because site costs are different. Every site is different. Site development is different. You have different utilities, storm drainage, a whole bunch of components from a site standpoint that are different, but you can control costs of what a building is going to cost.
Scott,
Yes.
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
Go ahead, John.
I'm looking at this chart here and I see two schools listed as PK through 5. But yet we were listed as K through 5 and then 6, 7, and 8 for a total of 9. Are we not putting in a PK through 8? And would we not have 10 classes as a result?
The way that the language on the chart is written, it just says K through 5, the way you do the calculation. So I think it can see where it doesn't say PK through 5 and count those twice. So we're following statutorily exactly the way they wrote it to do this,
Okay.
this calculation. It's a great question, though. Very good pickup. Great question. So next steps, what do we need to do to move this forward? We're finalizing the project options, whether it's potential renovation with additions, whether it's new construction on the existing Hall Memorial site, or potentially still new construction on an alternative site. With that, the team needs to complete their site due diligence, meaning really do our homework, look at these sites, develop project budgets for all of the options, and then present that information to the town for input. We broke this into 2 project timelines, again, just to show you what we would have to do if we were still intending, and until this committee tells us otherwise, our task right now is to develop something to get a grant application in by June 30th of this year. So we'll present preliminary information to the public April 28th to May 5th. Complete options budget evaluations by Monday, May 11th. Present projects to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance by May 18th. Would give them, that group, about 2 weeks to receive public input to those, to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. Set a referendum by Monday, June 1st. Have that referendum 2 weeks following and file the grant prior to June 30th. So you can see that there's going to be a lot to accomplish and not, unfortunately, a lot of time for public input, public interaction, and real proper due diligence and homework on those potential sites. Then we looked at what the timeline would be for filing a grant potentially by June 30th, 2027. Present preliminary information to public, May through June. Complete the options, budgets, evaluations by Monday, June 29th. So the school building committee would select a recommended option by the middle of July. Present that to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, at their July 15th meeting, and also following up in the August 5th meeting. And that would also give additional public input from that point of time of 4 weeks, not just 2. And again, we're presenting options now from May through June. So it's giving us a little more time up until May to develop the options, put costs onto the options, do some of the due diligence that we need to do. Set the referendum by Monday, September 2nd. Have the referendum on election day. Again, this is just a proposed schedule. This is not anything written in stone. And then submit the referendum's results prior to filing the grant for June 30th, 2027.
I have 2 questions on this, Scott, just
Yeah.
for clarity. The target of November is for convenience.
It's for convenience, right? If you so chose, you know, I know sometimes there's expense with having a referendum. If that made sense for the national referendum to tie it in with that, we proposed it in this case, but you would just have to approve the funding, you know, prior to the grant application. Now, what we typically look at is this is kind of in the sweet spot is November 3rd, when you look at an overall schedule. And again, depending on the direction from the committee, we'll start presenting those overall schedules in the future. But typically a facility, a project like this, by the time you plan it, you look at estimating and drawing reviews and critical milestones throughout that design process. You take it to the state, you get it approved. It's typically about 16, maybe 18 months to really do a very thorough job of designing it and estimating it, quality review of the documents. 18 months out from November of 2026 is July 2028. July 2028 is when the state would vote to approve the funding to go out to bid. So when you kind of look at the, you know, could we push it a couple more months and push the architects a little bit and say, hey, we're going to do it in 16 or 15? We could. You know, again, and that's a decision that we can talk about is how much time do you want to have for those document reviews, for estimating, and how quickly could the design team get it done. But the optimum target, if we file in June of 2027, the grant application, it's a year process. The state legislature approves the funding, the money that they're going to give you 1 year after that date. So in essence, you'd have a shovel-ready project. If you approved a referendum in November, you'd have a shovel-ready project the day that the state approves your funding to go out to bid.
One more question before I pop up this slide. So a lot of the concern that we've had since we started was the compressed schedule and not having adequate time to get community input before we get to the point where we're selecting a recommended, we're selecting a project that we think needs to advance to referendum. We are still working that process out, I think, as to what the logistics of a multiple choice referendum may be, or ultimately we have to apply with a single project to the other.
Yes, you have to file a grant. It's a single project. Yes.
So I guess, depending on where we go, my concern here is making sure that we have time and that present preliminary information to the public May through June, that we have some ability to kind of lock in some buy-in on an option, or present multiple options to the town and get consensus and community engagement about which option the community feels viable as well.
Right, in this,
Not necessarily after we pick one.
no, in this very high level, you know, schedule is preliminary information to the public through June. You know, based on that input, we complete the options in the budget estimates, depending on that input. So that input might change the project approach, that initial input. So up through June 29th, then there's still additional time that didn't want to have too many line items on the slide. But from June up until July, when we would anticipate that the school building committee would make a recommendation along with the Board of Education to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, even from June up till July, and a few more weeks as you're finalizing developing that, there would still be periods for public input. As much as we can garner. And then once that selection has been presented to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, again, we would assume that there would still be quite a bit of public input with those two groups. With our participation here, with school building committee participation, looking to then finally make a decision and set a referendum and a final project in early September.
I have a question about timing that for November 3rd, which is our election day for constitutional officers here in Connecticut. The election for constitutional officers and a school building referendum, I believe, are covered by separate statutes in the Connecticut general statutes. Are we certain that we could have the school building referendum on the same ballot, or would we need separate ballots? Can we do that on the same day?
Mike, did you want to?
I was not able to get a firm answer by today. We've found examples where other communities have done it. So it is possible. We're just not sure. They have other items, like if they have, say, a town charter that changes the rules for them or whatever. So we couldn't get an answer in time for today, but it has been done in other communities where they had government offices and local questions on the same ballot. So I think it can be done, but I have not confirmed it yet.
Ultimately, it's an efficiency from a cost perspective,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be November 3rd, it's just there might be some operational and cost efficiencies for that town if we.
Yeah, typically turnout efficiencies. Yeah, we have seen it done in a number of communities, but again, this is where, and again, this anticipates setting the referendum 2 months prior to. Again, I know, Mike, we've spoken about this. We want to make sure we look at the town charter. What is the formal process for setting a referendum? What is the timeline? Again,
Right.
so
We
we're just.
don't have a charter, so our rules are different from some of these other towns who have done it, so that's what.
Yeah, so we were just trying to, by these last two slides, just try and provide some level of understanding that one, I don't believe the committee is governed under the concern for the dollar value that was set by the state, but two, that I think even if you had had pushed it through, there's so much that we've got to do here. That I think having that extra time, it certainly benefit the project. And then if we want to show the last couple.
One quick question.
Since the SBC selected that recommended option in July, I believe that should come after the town referendum for people to count for what they're for. Or move it up, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think I think internally that's something we have to discuss, because if you offer up, I guess, 3 options to the town as an earlier referendum, and that certainly is a way you could do it. But that wouldn't be the funding referendum that the state requires by statute to move the project forward. You'd have to have a referendum say yes or no. So whatever format you use, whether it's town meeting, whether the board and the school building committee and the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, it's up to you guys to decide how ultimately that option was selected and recommended to move forward.
So we could have a unified referendum where we had the options presented, the town selects which one they want, and then through the said funding for that.
We don't know, and ultimately, I think we need to work that out, right?
You could pass something to 34%. Or even lower if you provided less, the more options. That I don't know will go very well.
Yeah.
So I just say,
It's not a strong mandate.
So
What he's saying is if you put 4 options to a referendum.
Yeah, you can only do that if you're doing, and in this case, you're doing the referendum prior to filing your grant application.
Yes.
When you file the grant application, it has to be 1 vote for a project for a specific.
yeah, the application
amount.
has to, but I
Yes.
think referendum doesn't necessarily have to be.
It
No,
also
I-
doesn't necessarily need to be a referendum. Yes, that goes to the
Right.
question I was trying to raise.
Yes.
Can a community
Right.
a selection or input on a project doesn't necessarily require referendum. We have to figure out as a group what the opportunity, how to achieve that. If it can't, if there isn't a formal at referendum multiple choice option that's available to us, so that makes sense. The important part is getting the community to come to consensus on something prior to us. Prior to that line, the third line down there, is HPC select, because we need the community input, and that's the advantage of the schedule, I think, is the ability to have the opportunity now to get that input.
Yeah, I think getting that, even that input from the community on whether, how we want to go about it. Is it multiple choice referendum that preferred, or is it?
I think the referendum would just need to vote on the one option that the community puts their input, or we do a vote, or however we get to that one option, that's gonna be the referendum that's Scott's speaking about. The referendum before grant application, how we get to the option is on us and how we decide. We can get there with the community, if it's a vote, if it's a town meeting, or however we get there.
Right, I'm just saying, I think we might get more support in the town if we asked them which way they want to go. Do we want to have a referendum, yes or
I think that
no?
was always the plan.
You know what I'm saying, doing a referendum, like, what referendum type would you like? Would you like referendum where we have multiple options, or
You
we have
can't,
a whole, or we have two separate referendums or two separate votes? One, we select what we want, and two, we vote against it.
I think we need to find opportunities to
Get the feedback.
get the feedback from the community. I think the recommendation that I've heard, I think all along is. We have to ultimately get to a point, the project that we're getting approval of funding for, a single project at referendum. And that is the recommendation. That said, I think we need to find a way of getting the community support. And selecting a project so that it's not just as anything. That's the critical point in this, and I think the schedule allows for it. Potentially. Where it allows for much better opportunity to get there than. I don't even want to see the other one again, so it's giving me a migraine just thinking about how that project would need to happen between now and June 30th.
Are we still planning to pursue the legislative, with
This coming up.
You got a few more slides?
Yeah, so again, just kind of going back when I presented the cost history, we actually recently worked on a project in Madison where the numbers were escalated to today's dollars, $452 a square foot, 493 escalated to 2028. Well, what does that mean? What kind of a project? What did that look like? Now, again, this is just meant to demonstrate sort of fit, finish, scope of the project. Certainly the architectural style of this, we anticipate would be quite different for the town of Willington. Would certainly look to probably pull some architectural features and things from the existing building. That'll be left up to community input and certainly from the architects. But we just wanted to very quickly just show, what that is. So this was a proposed elementary school and a new site. You can see, the parking, basketball courts, sports fields. Don't recall, Jeff, you probably know how large this was. It was probably
about 86,000, almost 90,000.
almost 90,000 square feet. So again, comparable in size and scale to this project. This again is an aerial view of the project. Again, a little bit more of a modern flavor to it. Again, I think architecturally, the style that would be better suited for Willington is probably something that more has some cues from the existing building. But again, this just shows you what that dollar value represents as far as new construction. And with that, that's the end of my presentation.
So, thank you, Scott. I think. It's nice to see or have some background data, because obviously it was a big question. We've been working very hard for the past several months to make sure that we capitalize on the potential for maximum reimbursement, and doing everything we can to not jeopardize that. So I think ultimately what we as a committee need to digest and decide so that we can provide these guys some direction And so that we can start to plan community engagement efforts as whatever schedule allows to us. I think we need to provide guidance as to whether or not we feel comfortable on this alternate timeline. And I'll open it up for discussion for anybody. I think the opportunity for community input that a couple extra months affords is
But needs to happen.
is as critical as it gets for us and for this project. And based on everything we've heard from the community.
Yeah, I was gonna echo that exact same thing. The community input is a critical piece. I hate to lose a whole year because the way this process works, you get this June or next June thing. I hate to lose a whole year of the process because it's escalation and all that. But I think the public input is so valuable. On not only getting it to pass if the public believes in that, but also getting the right input on what the project looks like.
Yeah.
So, now having this understanding, this more in-depth understanding of how this construction value restriction applies to our project. To me, it definitely leans towards getting out of this panic schedule we were in.
Can I ask, just to clarify on that, do I recall, was it a prior meeting? You had concerns about the schedule that we had captured in our RFP for the architect services, about it being too compressed.
Too compressed from the design standpoint, that's a perfect question. That, if you had, passed, if you still choose to, I should say, pass a referendum by this June 30th. It's gonna take a couple of months then to get an architect on board. 12 months to design it, is way too quick. So, again, if you look at that 16 to 18 months, we're 20 months out. You'd be looking to have a project starting midwinter. Which you're not gonna get a lot going necessarily midwinter or mid-semester if it's a renovation project, getting that going. So again, sort of that November timeline, 18 months out. You get your funding in 2028, you're ready to start construction, works a lot better than, we're really talking about 6 months here. We're talking about 6 months with an appropriate design time really puts you into starting a project in midwinter.
So the 1 year delay in application
Is really
only a 6 month loss. And
Approximately,
you get
yeah.
all this extra opportunity for public input, so that
Yeah, and
that
it's
sort of is that's the right formula now from.
right. And you're not starting by trying to excavate and pouring foundations in winter conditions and
Right.
so forth. So that is more
Oh, yeah.
money as well.
Correct. Water on the floor.
Yeah, by electronics.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, I can't see any hands online because we closed that window when we were sharing screen. Lisa, Peter, John, how do you guys feel about it?
I'm in favor of going back to November for the referendum. I think being able to combine the two would save the town a considerable amount of money. I'm in favor of it.
I see Lisa now.
I'm torn. There's 2 points I see to it. I see that there's value in having more time for designing. Because if you try to do it fast, you can have it good, fast, or cheap. They pick two. So if we try to do it fast, well, it's not gonna be cheap. But it'd be good, there's a balance we have to have, and so I think having the extra time will allow us to have a better design. It's more cost effective. Definitely. Without a doubt. However, if we do delay, now we have escalation costs. And, if we're looking at our costs is close to the limit, if we have inflationary costs of, building materials and things like that, put us over. Potentially, and $90,000 or 9,000 square feet, give or take, a few dollars, $1 over is $90,000. So, there's some concern with that, and it doesn't seem to have a escalation in terms of inflationary cost from the state formula. I don't know if that's the case. Is there any escalation for the square footage costs? Yearly?
That's another thing that they haven't defined yet. But again, that's why I projected it out to a 2028 bid. And you saw that all those numbers were, again, right in the range of the 503. I have to think that, the state couldn't impose a limit and hold it for 5 or 10 years and feel that the world is never going to escalate costs. That's unreasonable.
Right. Yeah, that's
But
fine.
they have they haven't, we've gotten as much of the clarification as we've gotten. They haven't addressed, we have asked the question, but they haven't addressed that yet.
Because, I mean, right, the sooner you build it, obviously, unless we have inflation, I don't think it's gonna happen. The sooner you build it, the more value potentially you get, because your money will buy more.
Yeah, but again, rushing through the design, as we talked about, this, you're probably only, I don't want to say losing, but you're probably starting it in a sweet spot for construction versus 6 months earlier within the winter months.
Right.
So from an escalation standpoint, you're talking about maybe 6 months, but when you start talking about winter conditions and everything that comes with starting a project in midwinter, I really don't think the cost savings is that significant. And the concern, or, again, architects do, great jobs putting these things together, but, things can be rushed. And when decisions need to be rushed and made, or by, the end user, those times to review or and talk about the process of designing a building and how that's going to function, how that's going to work for the kids, some of that can get shortcut as well. So your ultimate solution may not be as well developed as one if you hadn't really pushed through it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm sort of torn. I think that having the extra time for design, you're gonna have a quality design and you're gonna have a cost-effective design as opposed to trying to rush it. My only concern would be the escalation of materials versus square footage cost. It doesn't seem to be defined by the state. Like you said, there's nothing yet to have answered. That's my concern.
And we're gonna build the budget that accounts for escalations up to what we see as bidding and midpoint of construction costs. We're gonna work to that budget. So that's gonna be the budget that gets voted on and presented to the community, as a budget that includes escalations right to where we feel the project is gonna be constructed and represents that.
And that's our job to make sure as that advances that the project develops on budget. That's our goal.
I'm looking at the numbers. There's not a lot of breathing room, and that's what makes me a little nervous.
You don't know what the finishes are, and that's
why I looked at that. This school too.
right.
And the thing is, these two schools, the architecture of those is a lot closer to what I think is probably
that kind of
more acceptable community than Madison or Vale.
I think it's important though, just understand about those weather conditions. If we do start construction in the winter, you're gonna be heating the ground thaw, you're gonna be adding to your concrete, heating, all that stuff. So I think it's not a huge gap, and escalation over 6 months.
So I'm a little bit torn, but I think overall I am leaning towards, I think, given the extra design time, you're gonna get a quality product and a more cost effective, design.
Jeff, and Tony, I believe it probably affords some additional opportunities for input during the design process from the community too, rather than like a more robust planning during schematic design.
Oh, certainly, yeah, I think you're gonna need time during schematic design and design development after the project's approved to get the necessary input from the community, stakeholders, parents, staff, faculty. So, I think what Scott outlined as far as the design timetable for a building of this size seems appropriate.
I think the most important thing is the community engagement, community discussions on the options and what they want to see, because that's how you get a chance of a successful referendum. I also think if we rush it, it puts that percentage down, that's gonna pass, in my opinion. Because they need to be heard, they need to see what we're coming up for options, come up with comments, and then we need to take that all into consideration. That's the most important piece, in my opinion.
All right.
I just want to add, Jim, quick, that I think that we want to make sure that we have a succinct answer to, because I'm thinking that materials that we've already put out, and we kind of stressed this June 30th deadline. And I agree with everything that's said about extending the deadline, but I want to make sure we have a succinct answer that people can not easily digest, but kind of readily digest as an explanation for why we're moving things around a bit.
Maybe the subject of the next mail.
Right.
Is really.
Information's here.
Yeah, the clarification of costs, like what's not included.
It's all there.
Yeah, so
So what we'll do, or I think to that end, Lisa, Scott, without any objection, I think we can share this.
Post it, share it.
Post it on the website.
I think some clarification now, starting out with this for the general public proposed regulations, saying that. Anyway, my wife read it, she teaches writing at the University of Hartford, she said, like, don't leave with that for the general public. You need some sort of general summary to kind of explain in plain English.
Yeah.
And this is where, this was a presentation and a PowerPoint slide and Jim had his introduction. So yeah, totally agree. So maybe there's an introduction to this authored by the school building committee that can get added into this or
Yeah, it's not
posted prior to this,
Yeah,
explaining that.
right. You're not here
Intro.
speaking, because you're here speaking to us.
Right.
But no one's going to be for them, so.
No, understood. Yeah, good suggestion.
All right. We get everybody. I think we got general consensus that we're going to say we're going to allow these guys the opportunity. We're going to pursue an alternate schedule, given the information presented, and target a November. For now, target a rough idea of a November referendum. And Scott, what we'd ask is, I know your milestone schedules to date have been through June 30th. The sooner we can, I guess, kind of start to rough out what that new duration really looks like from milestone needs, design team needs. And then the important part is really starting to filter in community engagement into that schedule.
Yeah, and I think the key factor to that, Mike, is if, sooner than later, if you can get me your referendum process, because really that we'll target right now, based on my understanding from this evening, the November 3rd, with the understanding that that could change. But if you can get me your process, we'll work back from November 3rd to, how much time we need for the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen to opine in that final solution before they set the referendum, and then we'll work backwards.
And November 3rd isn't a magic number. It can extend to December,
It
January,
could, yeah,
February
right.
if needed, because we're still filing by July the following,
Yes,
or by July 1st the following year. That
correct.
So with that being said, what does that do to their contract with the Tectonic Colliers?
question.
I'm just, we have them until June 30th.
That is contractual. Yeah.
Correct.
So that is a good
So
point.
what's that look like? Another year with them on? Or
Well,
another,
you're not cramming 60 pounds of stuff in a smaller bag now, you're saving that 60 pounds in a longer duration, so we can work on other things.
That is a good question, whether there's, what your labor.
it's still.
Yeah, I think once that schedule is defined and we'll look at what those, remaining deliverables are, we'll work with Jeff. See where their numbers lie. I know for ourselves, again, we've been working sort of hourly. I think, we should be able to stretch our current, commitment to you past June. I'm not sure how far past, but I will let you know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's advantageous to get to that point, because once we get to referendum, we'll obviously need to resolicit
Right.
for
Yes.
continuation services beyond that point.
You'll have to do, an RFP for architect and OPM if you
Yep.
choose that, and then certainly at that point as well, bring in a construction manager.
I didn't have a chance to ask you for a financial report still to the business office, but we're floating around $100,000 of unencumbered, correct? Of other expenses, but there is some. Okay.
I just forgot. What's the mail cost? What was that, like $3,500?
No, I think it was like
1,200 total.
Well, 14.
Oh, maybe it was, maybe it was 35 votes. No.
Oh, yeah.
We won't have time to get more in front of mine too.
Well, if we're gonna change this, it's just nice to get a.
No, I agree.
Like Lisa said, get another ballot out saying.
No, I,
Plus this.
yeah, I think we need to make the public aware, that's, to the extent that we can, hopefully people are benefit from starting to pay that.
Sure will have.
But,
When do we want to decide whether or not we're gonna change our schedule?
I think we should do it right now.
well, if we don't do it now, we are committed to doing, several steps very aggressively, it's like,
Say, because we need to align with what the plan is
yeah.
soon, otherwise.
Yeah, I think we should, I think if we're comfortable enough to do it, I think we should try to get them direction tonight.
I just think it's hard enough to know when.
Yeah, well, contractual, do you have any contractual, can you?
So we'll lose a week waiting on that, that doesn't make sense. If we gotta make a decision, I mean, we're gonna lose a week to talk about a little bit of money here, I mean.
Contractual obligation, is there any contractual conflict that you're aware of?
Sorry.
I don't know.
For your services, either colors or Tecom?
I'll just, speaking in Collier's behalf, I think when we interviewed, we understood that there was the possibility that it could go past the date, and again, you're absolutely right that, some of the efforts that we anticipated now will get spread out a little bit further. But there may be more meetings than we normally would have done, so, we will take a look at, when we get the revised schedule done, how far we think our current funding will take us. And then again, we're happy to just continue on working on an hourly basis as, to service this committee, up until that referendum or at such point you determine you don't need our services. But we can get you, I can get you an updated not to exceed, so you have an upset limit.
And you said, though, are you aware of any contractual conflicts you have with another project?
Oh, that.
Oh,
that's
sorry, no,
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, as well, okay, Tecom as well?
Yeah,
I know, no.
that won't be a problem.
And I think to that end, I mean, if it's November, or if it's shorter, if it needs to be shorter because we feel costs may escalate, we can always make that decision now, but I think that the important part is that we kind of get that. We give that direction. Rather.
Fast question on this.
Absolutely.
One other item that would be important to understand is if you are in fact going for November 3rd, that blackout period.
Yep.
I don't know if it's triggered from a board of selectmen meeting but understanding, because that's gonna affect our work as well. And
That's very much on my radar.
okay, thank you.
That it's on there right now. Yeah, it's shorter than the blackout period that you showed in your slide.
It's essentially tied to when the Board of Selectmen votes to, in this example, we're talking about if we were gonna add that question to the ballot that's gonna be in the November election, once we determine that is legally viable.
Yeah.
Then at the time that the Board of Selectmen calls that and officially adds that to the ballot, would, I believe, and again, we'll get the clarity for sure, we'll get it in writing. I believe that starts the blackout period.
Right, thank you.
I'm not even sure we need a formal vote on this, it's just more.
Yeah, there was no motion previously that said it had to be done.
Right,
Right, it was just the goal.
Yeah, was that part of our charge or no? Don't think so.
No.
You do have to.
The 2027 date is implied by our charge, because of the legislation. So. All right,
Then change our schedule.
well, I think the next step, that's what I was trying to get at, Scott, the next step is for you to kind of start to look at that.
And your meetings are currently posted to the end of the year, every other week. So I've already started developing the milestone schedule, so I started putting in all your Board of Finance meetings, Board of Selectmen, this school building committee meetings to the end of the year. And again, so I would anticipate, having that prior to our next meeting.
That would be helpful. And maybe it just means less special meetings.
you know, bi-weekly seems to be a good pace. We've had so many special because there's been so much work to do, quite frankly, that.
That also potentially dovetails nicely into the budget season starting around the end of the calendar year. Because we would have gotten through more lengthy process of cost development, conversation with the community and all that. And have numbers to plug right into the. You know, when November and December, when we start our budget process, we'll have the numbers to plug right into capital or operations or wherever.
Yeah.
So when would we do the operating and budgetary projections for the facility?
Well,
Yeah,
I was just trying to process like what point we from a, see if you guys generally do that.
well, I think it's really much more of a project management question at this point because. Until you come up with a project and the timeline, you don't know when those operational costs are gonna affect the budget process, and the budget process is only looking out about 19 months. We start the budget process in November or December to create the next July 1 budget, so it would be a year from that July 1. So if, for example, if the operational cost of a new building or leaving other buildings. That really wouldn't hit until construction is complete and you move, so it's 2 or 3 years out maybe.
Right, and in terms of estimating for our cost analysis and tax impact.
Right, that's what I mean, is that's a more of a project management or project design or this committee conversation.
Okay.
It doesn't become an actual budget town. It doesn't become a conversation in the budget process until about 7 months before, 8 months before the year it affects.
Okay, because there's like contractual things, and we have the bus, you know, and things like that.
yeah, it would be,
I wasn't sure how this, because we need to get that data for the impacts.
correct, we have,
Yeah,
that's still.
so that should happen by this committee's work. Yep, definitely.
All right, so I'm gonna recommend, just that we proceed accordingly for now. We're gonna say we're gonna target, you're gonna come up with a working schedule. That we can review at our next regular meeting in 2, by the end of the month, might be 2 weeks. Might be 3, depending on how those weeks work out. And then we can hopefully have those conversations, if you guys can both get back to us on, potential impacts for extending to that schedule, and then we can. But in the meantime, I think, let's proceed as we're heading that direction, and we'll have final confirmation when we have that data from you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I believe your next posted meeting is May though.
Yeah, perfect. I scheduled it for the Tuesday, not the Monday. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I know.
So speaking of,
We should change it when we get there.
do we have any conflicts from your group timing wise? You know, maybe schedules going forward?
I think what we're gonna do is work with Scott to overlap all the different schedules and look at delivery dates on actual scope. So we'll try to avoid that.
All right. So, we okay to move on? Still 2 weeks from now, everybody? Beautiful. All right, communications and community engagement. I'm gonna say, I don't know what was discussed at the last meeting. I believe, you had presented some outline, if I remember correctly. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's been a rough couple of weeks. Yeah, I think to me, we can defer this unless you have something. I think the idea being we want to get this scheduled and into that work plan, because now we have the time to do it. So,
I think we did present a draft schedule based on
Yep.
the previous timeline, so we can connect with Scott as he's developing that
okay,
roadmap, the community engagement plan into that.
Yeah, I guess all the components of what we want to do are there, but now that we're hearing the shift, let's rethink where they want to fall. And the overall schedule. So,
perfect.
Yeah, I do think we want to try and maximize public input prior to the summer break. You know, so I think that will still be a focus because, you know, recognizing the fact that a lot of people go on vacation
Yep.
over the summer months when school's out. So, you know, I think we'll definitely be still targeting a lot of that a lot of those discussions, a lot of that interaction, before the end of June.
You need anything from us at this point to start to think that through? From a key dates or?
No, not at this point. Let me get it roughed out and let me, work with Mike and again, sort of work backwards so we understand what the referendum schedule is.
All right.
Because depending on if that's shorter than we anticipate, there may still be opportunity for some further input or engagement at the end of the summer, going into the fall prior to setting a referendum.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We talked about the marketing firm, if we were not able to do that in a short time frame. If we adjust to that longer time frame.
He did call it too. And I just told them we're still discussing it and we're looking at schedules, to let you know.
But that might be something that they wanna consider. In the time frame if we are going to, so that.
Can you, since you had that contact, can you, what's the name of the company?
Tall Timbers.
Tall Timbers. Can you reach out and reconnect with Tall Timbers?
I just talked to him last week.
Okay.
So basically it's up to us to let him know what we want to do.
Is there any update to his? I forget what he gave us last time. He gave us a scope of work and full pricing schedule. So I think that's something what I will do is I will coordinate that with you. And see how what I want to understand is how the work you guys do and interrelates with what
That would be
another person does. Because I suspect there's going to be quite a bit of overlap.
Could be, yeah.
Potentially, and I want to make sure that we're avoiding it and scoping it correctly, but at the same time. More hands at this we can get, so let me, I will forward that information to you and we can start to think through how that integrates into your engagement plan.
So you'll stand on contract until Bill allows.
Yeah, just let them know that we're discussing, I'm gonna get,
Yeah.
we're gonna get the architects, input on what their
Okay.
engagement session, what their engagement process looks like, so that we can make sure that no overlap, there's no overlap scope back there. All right. Mike left right at the key time when I was gonna ask him for what that next step was. So we'll circle back, actually, we will. We're gonna skip 5C for a second until Mike gets back in the room. Go to 5D, operational impact consideration for consolidation, just a brief update. Has there been any update? You guys are trying to work your meeting to. And that goes to the operational efficiencies, consolidating from two schools to one end.
Do you have any suggestion?
Let's get the board together. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna have staffing. Transportation is what it is, pretty straightforward. Might be, it just depends on. Cost, one final, but it's not huge money, but. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was making factual.
What do you mean? Well, there are things like we pay for preventative maintenance on 2 buildings. We pay for preventative maintenance on 1 building, right? Things like that. There are contractual things, are staffing number of people for,
Insurance.
Yeah, things like that. But, I mean, I don't know that insurance, I'm not gonna gather quotes for insurance.
So, I mean, like. Building insurance, we can have a projection at least from our consultants.
But we have design options, right?
I'm not gonna gather that. I don't know what you're asking me to gather.
No, I'm just looking at, I wasn't sure what information you were gathering, so then. Whatever you're not gathering, you can get somewhere else.
I can give you. What we budget for utilities. But. They would have to tell us like, hey, for a 90,000 square foot building, this is what we estimate it would be. But it's probably gonna be different whether it's a rent out addition versus a new building, correct?
Yes.
So like, I won't have that stuff, but I can easily give the amounts we budget and spend for the last 5 years easily.
That'll all work its way out once we get some consideration that we're gonna go after 3 different options, we can look at the options and go from there.
Yeah,
I think that all falls into place once we get
I
the
think
conceptual design.
Yeah.
the key part on this from your end, Phil, is just seeing what operationally from a staffing perspective.
Yes.
That hits the budget, so that we can factor it into our discussion going forward.
Yeah, I was just trying to see what you were gonna be providing.
That's what I pulled.
Yeah.
All right, so. Keep it, oh, good, Mike's back. Good timing, Mike. Just keep us posted, Phil, you schedule that stuff, what's coming. There's a little bit more time. Potentially now. Mike, thank you. Gonna go back to 5C. Administrative needs, contract status for AE services. Do we have any update on that?
I don't believe, unless I've missed it somewhere, I've not received a contract.
Can you follow up with that?
Draft's prepared. Yeah, I will follow up.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And if it did get sent, please let me know.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure out where it got routed to, because
No problem.
Take a look at it. And you guys covered the financial report last week. There's been no additional spending since then. We'll table that until we have an update.
or just to go back, just because if the public, anyone from the public listening, just for clarity, we do have a draft, we have an initial contractual obligation by letter of intent.
Yeah.
Just so that no one in the public gets the mistaken idea that we don't have any arrangement with Tecton. We do have a letter of intent in
Yeah.
place, so there's a certain amount of protection for the taxpayers' money and for Tecton.
Thank you, Mike. All right. So with that, we'll move along because I really want to get the tech on their updates. So really briefly under new business enrollment projections. Present item 6A, presentation coordination. So there's been a lot of discussion. I think you guys touched on it at the last meeting as well, but there's been a lot of discussion in the community about what these enrollment projections mean and how they were generated. So with that in mind, I think there's some advantage and interest in having Dr. Crowder come in and kind of clarify those questions for us and for the community. So what I did, through contact provided by Phil, was I reached out to Dr. Crowder to see what it would cost to have him come in and basically prepare a presentation and to come into a meeting and present his enrollment projections to us as the demographer who does this for a living, who understands the data that went into it. I think that would be very advantageous. So he did give us a quote of $900 and would be generally available except for a couple of vacation days. I'd like to get him in as soon as possible if you guys are amenable to that expense. I think it would really, I'm hoping it would help ease any questions we may have and that the community at large may have about what's driving the enrollment projections and hopefully answer questions.
I move, we do that. We have him come in. I suggest we do it fall Thursday. We have a larger facility there where we can have a good presentation to the community. We'll get more engagement. Phil said we can do that if we have get out.
All right. Let's try, so let's make a motion to approve up to a spending limit, I think. And then we'll coordinate scheduling dates with Dr. Prada. I think we need to only approve the fact that we're willing to make the expense or encumber the expense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think this is too small to do it here. Actually, communicate like that.
Yeah, we can consider.
I'll make a motion to approve the $900 to have him prepare this PowerPoint and present.
I'll second.
All right,
Who was the second?
Adam and Adam.
Thank you.
Just add B first, add the D second.
Alphabetical apples. There we go. All right, any further discussion? Take it through. All right. Let's just go. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna ask who's.
Aye.
Oh, and Ann joined. What's the protocol for that?
Aye.
Jim, I'll let the alternate continue the meeting since I was late.
That works.
Okay, I'll just listen in.
Thank you, Ann. That makes that a lot easier. So Lisa, Peter, and John.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, beautiful. That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. I will reach out to Dr. Prada and see what his availability is. We can consider Thursdays at all, barring any other public meeting conflicts and his vacation day. So
You can consider a bunch of days at all.
yeah.
Yeah, we go Thursday, another meetings, a group as Lisa committee with Ben.
I will reach out. All right. Good. I lost my agenda. I apologize. There it is. Design concept 6P, design concept updates by Tecton Architects. And with that, without further ado, thank you for your patience.
Sure.
You're sharing. Oh, beautiful.
Sharing.
I'm just gonna go ahead and do.
Right. Well, good evening, everyone. Jeff Kwasinski, Principal at Tecton Architects.
Antonia Ciavarella, architectural designer at Tecton.
I think everybody has a copy, and if you would like a copy, you can certainly have one. You have one there. So we prepared a brief update presentation slide deck. There's several slides in here that are repeat, but I think it's important to walk through some of the same materials just briefly, and then we'll land on some of the design updates.
Perfect.
So just the existing conditions recap, I'll be quick. Updates to the ed spec that were asked at our last building committee meeting. And Tony wants us to go over a few items on the community engagement. We put together a schedule, but that schedule is going to have to be thought of in the context of what we discussed earlier, as far as the agenda. So the components are there. There's some good community events that we've identified. Love to hear more on what other activities we could participate in to make sure that there's some good community engagement, and then we'll go over the conceptual plans. We did a little more digging into existing conditions and how those conditions may affect the proposed new development and or addition renovations. So wanted to capture that. So as we move through this slide deck, we know it's important to honor the legacy and talk about the new chapter, whether it's on this particular site or another site. And Tony will get into that momentarily. We talked about the conditions overall, summarized them not only from a building systems perspective, but abatement, accessibility, soup to nuts throughout each of the buildings. So we did walk through those, documented, communicate that at a previous meeting. We then went through and understood how the building's used today programmatically. So that's what things plans represent. This captures the square footages that we will be using moving forward with Scott and our team on the estimating. So those have been further developed and refined, verified, and then community engagement. And Antonio spoke to kind of the process and the various different groups that we'd like to have involved in the engagement, from think tanks, which is a kind of a smaller roll up your sleeve working session. So if we can get those on the calendar, I think those are really good inspirational activities to hear good good feedback from a cross section of the community should they participate. The leadership groups we've been meeting with, the working groups we've been having regular meetings with, and then obviously we need to start targeting some community town halls. So this is, you've seen the slide before, what these engagement activities look like at a variety of different scales. So we try to ask the question a variety of different ways so that we can start to identify some themes to the responses. So again, we're ready, willing, and able to prepare printed materials that are posted online regarding these activities once they're scheduled. Making sure that we coordinate with the district on updating all of our presentation and slide decks, and if there's videos or any kind of summary information that needs to be posted to help clarify the design intent in the project, will certainly do so. So this, I'm going to turn it over to Antonio, but this is, again, treat this as a draft. This was generated before the conversation tonight, so we'll modify this accordingly. But if you can go over the importance of these elements.
Yeah, sure. So along the top is probably the most important, we're looking to schedule a think tank, possibly a second one. But certainly that first think tank where we start to big picture, think about what that student experience is by grade. We know we talked pre-K to 8, that unique learning experience. So we thought that would be a great theme for our think tank, which is a cross section of educators, staff members, parents, students, board members, any community members, leaders, nonprofit groups that you'd like to have liaisons present at that think tank. We really want a cross section of education, town, and community and family members as part of these think tanks. As Jeff said, they're focused workshop type sessions, and then those results get shared out at some of our larger events, like the community conversations. So those are the teal, or like light greenish tealish. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Elements. We would love to have 2 to 3 of those. We've mapped out 3 now that this contemplated that longer schedule already. So we felt we could get a third community conversation in there. As Jeff said, we'll fine tune the rhythm of these and the months in which they might take place. But if the first community conversation is about what exists and what's possible, that allows the community at large to understand the existing conditions, understand the demographics and other data collected to date, some of the benchmarking information, and then some of the reasons why we started to develop the concepts that we did. So that community conversation number 1 sets the foundation. And then when we reconvene for refining the direction, we'll start to share a little bit in a deeper way the different options considered and the benefits and challenges to each. And then once we have that preferred direction, we come back for community conversation number 3 and deep dive into what that community preferred option is and costs associated with that. So those are the 3 community conversations that we would love to have, in addition to some other events and opportunities that we'll talk about on a later slide. And you can see below, there's just the map of your SBC meetings and a couple of our dates, which again, we'll refine now that we're discussing the grant application and referendum, et cetera. So we'll continue to modify this, but that was the themes and cadence generally.
And thanks, and to, sorry to.
No, you're good too.
But to Scott's point earlier, we want to try to get some effective engagement prior to the break, because July and August are typically going to be difficult to get feedback unless there's a hotspot, vacation hotspot somewhere in town where we're going to hang out. Which maybe
We've done family full night. So.
Right, we have done.
So these are those other dates that were shared with us, and we talked a little bit about Willington Day at our last meeting. So we just wanted to bring these up for conversation with this group to see what the appetite is for some level of representation at these events, whether that's just printed materials. We think, maybe the Evening of the Arts could be an opportunity for some boards or informational flyers versus the Willington Day, which could be more of an in-person event, obviously. So we wanted to just document these opportunities for community engagement in the short term, and then just identify how we want to show up at those different events, whether it's, again, printed materials or in person.
But we missed Evening of the Arts last week.
Yeah.
Delay in the.
How was that? Yeah. You were into it, right?
I put our leftover yellow post.
I saw those there, yeah. Yeah, actually, my daughter mentioned she saw those. So, but, I mean, I'll jump in. I did Willington Day, I think it was a must. And I think it would be good for us to be able to answer questions, to have representatives there, whatever that looks like. I'm not sure the spring choir needs anything more than maybe distribution of material to get people to pay attention on Willington Day, or if that.
I mean, I think the concept of, informational boards could be anywhere. There could be the town office building, it could be the town library, it could be an event like the Aspire concert, it could be at a parent drop off. The transfer station, anywhere people are, I think that's where.
Yeah. Do you have a project email already established?
We do.
Okay.
I can share that with you. It's on the website. It's.
I think we have it on one of our.
It's not used by the public all that much yet.
Okay.
I'm hoping it becomes used more as we
Yeah,
get more
that's what I-
information out there. It's SBCA, Willington CP.
Yeah, that's right. We had it there.
There you go. So yes, please, community, if you're watching this at home, SBC at WillingtonCT.gov.org, excuse me, with any of your questions.
And we can talk maybe offline about, there was some great material, I think back in the fall, there was a survey completed about, asking some of the reasons why in the previous projects. I'm just wondering if we don't have to have that conversation tonight, but maybe start talking about what this feedback loop is, so that we could better understand, the questions. It's that, everybody obviously is gonna have an opinion, and they're gonna come from all different angles, but what's important to us is to make sure that we're clear, consistent and transparent with what we provide out there as far as the information. Because this is about your project, not ours, so. So we'll continue to work. We'll work with Scott on kind of tuning up some of the graphic schedules. I think a schedule is always helpful on part of the board so the community can kind of see where there's opportunities for input and when they need to make a decision.
Yeah, schedule, what we're exploring today.
Yep. Why are you doing the
why
project? Yep.
start that these initial flyers, at least at these events.
Sure.
For your community.
Yep.
Whatever you called it, community.
Yeah, community, the conversations.
Conversation, thank
Yep.
you. Sorry, I couldn't think of it.
How do we plan that for ourselves with tasks we have?
Melissa, who's the chairwoman today? Is it Melissa? Yes? No. Oh, Melissa, is she? Hold on. Melissa McKinnon, are you on?
I am.
Hi, Melissa, how are you? So we're talking about perhaps having some ability to engage with the community at Willington Day. Can I circle back with you to discuss what opportunities we have and making sure that we have the ability to get in there with at least a booth and some opportunities to share information with the public, be available for questions?
Of course.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. I will follow up with you sometime later this week.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Discuss the details of that at our next meeting. Sound good? All right. I'm gonna close this again.
Having participated in multiple Willington days, I would recommend that we have some arts and crafts or something educational for kids. If you attract kids over to the booth, the parents kind of follow, and then you have a chance to speak with the parents while the kids are examining whatever free books or free comic books, arts and crafts you've got on hand.
Balloon guy.
Hey, Melissa, is the balloon person already hired? You're muted.
Yeah,
You're muted.
Can't hear you.
She can't unmute herself.
That's all right. I will,
Oh, can you hear me now?
oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry. I was just talking with him and I was about to book him. He's $125 an hour. He's honoring his rate from last year, so if that's an option that you guys want to pick.
I'm just telling you what's gonna draw people in. Face painting and balloon man.
Yeah, the balloon guy, he hit, like I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do, sorry, my dog is going crazy with her toy. If I wanted to do 2 hours or 3 hours, because his line was always long and nonstop busy. That or like a bounce house type thing, is always pretty popular.
We'll discuss that.
You can email or call me, whatever.
Potentially approved.
Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
How do we feel about, we can say, do we want to, look for funding for something?
Talk about it. It's a golden made opportunity to connect with the public. They're already gonna be there.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
I think we should do as much as we can to engage the public. If it's balloon guide, it's ice cream, if it's, I don't know, water balloons, whatever.
All right, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve up to $400. For just so that we have some wiggle room, up to $400 for potential expenses for community engagement or the day.
I'll second.
Second, discussion.
1,000. I think if you wanna have posters, you wanna have flyers. You wanna actually engage the public and be able to, I think we need a bigger budget than them. Right, if we have the balloon guidance, for 20 an hour. And we're gonna need some flyers, we're gonna need some, we need information we can get from the community that we can give to them. So it's gonna be posters, things like that, so it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
We can also put a full page ad into the program for Willington Day. It's low cost, $30.
Of all the things we've done in the past, and I've talked about so far about getting community engagement, this is an opportunity to. Someone else has already built the crowd for it.
I think.
And that's still cheaper than one postcard mailing. I agree if we cap it at 1,000.
All right.
It's gonna cost at least several hundred, plus I think 1,000 is more reasonable budget.
What are we gonna do, accept a friendly amendment, up to seven on that?
Yeah, and just ask John if he'll second that.
John, will you second a friendly amendment to approve up to 1,000 for potential costs?
Absolutely seconded.
All right. Yeah, we gotta vote on that. Do we have to vote on that? I should know this, but I don't.
You just made the motion. So you gotta vote on it.
No, you have to vote on.
Is there any other discussion? Oh, no.
Okay, good. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Peter, you changed your voice. Peter, you still there? Sorry, no, I can't do it with you guys.
He's still on.
You could be tied up.
Yeah. All right. I'll abstain by default. All right, so the motion carries, so thank you. So we will have a presence at Willington Day. What that looks like, I don't know, but I think it would be great, particularly in that event, to have representation for sure.
Sure. That's great.
Beautiful. All right, now back to your regularly scheduled.
All right, thank you very much. It was a good conversation. The next topic is, we had some modest modifications, at the last, school building committee. Mostly related to, so you've seen this slide before, the yellow. Let me go back on the yellow circle on that far right-hand side is the proposed area, so it's 94,000 square feet, just to keep everybody updated, and then where it changed.
This is just for reference, nothing drastic changed here. Just again, as a reminder, the text in red is anything that was modified from the original, but this is the version that has been before the Board of Ed. So just documenting the academic, the specialized education. We did have some great feedback around the tech repair, the addition of that space into the learning commons, so that room has been added. We had a request to increase the square foot area for the custodial office and workshop. That has been slightly increased. We confirmed a loading dock, and we also confirmed a full building generator and added an outdoor grounds and maintenance storage room as requested. Wow. And that is how we arrived at the new square footage area.
Yeah, so just that's the. So just going back to this slide, just so everybody's on the same page. Existing buildings, you need to combine them is about 100,000. This proposed single building is at the target area is at 94,000. Just so it did get modified, and based on those comments, we just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Quick question for Madam on that, then I got one.
So we have loading dock there for the ramp door or stuff we don't bring in via a loading dock. Is there any additional square footage for that, or is it just or? Wasn't sure here.
No, it was just verbiage.
Yeah.
You're talking about the
Yeah, because we have a loading dock, but also a ramp door because you can't bring everything in via loading dock easily.
Yeah, that's not building area.
yeah, but that's not building area.
Okay, I wasn't sure how your layout.
I think we
that was the
tweaked it
case.
in the language.
We just did.
Yeah.
language, correct.
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, where was your tech, main?
It's buried on yours, but it is this thing animates,
sorry,
so it's up on the screen. Okay, it was buried because it animates over one, just to, so it's a small repair room.
125.
Okay.
Off of the, typically they're off of the medium. It's basically where they repair all the one. Chromebooks.
Yeah, and can I just say that everything that's, the modifications are things that already exist?
Yeah.
They're not new. They're already things that exist. We don't have a loading dock.
Yeah.
But like the outdoor ground maintenance storage.
Yeah.
That already exists, actually probably times 4 that
Yeah.
square footage.
Yeah, it's significantly more, it's like about 5 minutes.
So the items that are in there are things that already exist.
Where do we stand? The question is actually for you, Bill, for me. Where do we stand on Board of Ed's adoption of?
They have given the nod to the square footage and they saw the updates from everything that we did in language and there was no changes. They just haven't they haven't voted on the final document in case it changes again, but they are fully aware of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right. Great. The existing buildings. Shed?
Shed.
I thought they were affordable, I wasn't sure.
I don't know what condition those sheds are in, to be honest with you, if they could be moved, then make it over now.
So we can look at that as a part of project development way down.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yes.
Unfortunately, those are the most cost-effective way of gaining outdoor storage without.
Right.
It's difficult to work it into a program at a reasonable price.
Yep.
Right. As much as I like should.
I know, I understand, that's why I was asking.
Yes.
Yeah, if they're in decent shape, we can use them, it makes a lot of sense to me.
All right. So we wanted to take a deeper dive into this concept of honoring the hall legacy. We know it's an important component. We know the building has a presence currently on the site, and there are some opportunities to, through architectural materiality or through scale and proportion, to honor that existing building. On the next slide, we also wanted to look broader. We know that your community as a whole has some other historical elements and opportunities through the landscape, through the built environment, where we can also pull some ideas when we talk about, you know, what is the community character, what is the community aesthetic of Willington. We know that we want to honor the hall legacy, but we also want to make it reflective of your community at large. So we've just gathered some images here, whether we take inspiration from the stone, from some of the more wooden siding, whether we take inspiration from some of the more natural landscapes, specifically in our outdoor learning areas. We can leverage all of these opportunities as we move into the design phase. And this slide, what we enjoy about this slide is that the aesthetic is throughout our work is so different, and it truly is unique to the community that we're serving. So you can see a variety of styles here that were all driven by this community engagement process, and not one is an exact replica of the other, and that's intentional because we really want them to fit into the surrounding context and landscape. So the variety of styles here in our portfolio is an intentional result of a process that is derived from community feedback. And so when we look a little bit deeper at the building itself, the Hall Memorial School, what we saw is certainly some strong symmetry around that central axis. We saw some of those repeating, more vertical window elements that really embrace the human scale. We saw that proportionally, they were sitting slightly lower within the building frame as a whole. Some simple roof forms, some ways to incorporate the signage actually into the building facade and elements of the school in that historical character. We can raise the base of the school while providing some accessible access to really promote that sense of presence and that sense of hierarchy within the built environment. And we have these columns, whether it's 4 or additional column porticos that we can start to create to mimic this existing building facade. Some other examples that we have drawn from our portfolio. This was the historic barn meets modern building is an example of salvaging some materials from a community historic barn into this new construction project. So we've talked about the granite steps at the existing Hall Memorial. Maybe that's an opportunity to salvage some materials. On the right-hand side, this is a fully accessible structure. The building was not fully accessible before, and in creating it to be that way, we were also able to create this new social environment, this new community approach and entry, and really mimic and honor some of the existing signature campus aesthetics that already existed in a timeless way. On the next slide, thank you, Jeff. This is an example of maybe you keep, we talked a little bit in the Renovate as New option about keeping some of the Hall Memorial building and building new behind. This is an extreme example of that, where we were able to keep the historic facade of a building and build all new behind it. So certainly that can be done as well. And on the right-hand side, this building leverages the topography, which we know on the existing Hall Memorial site is something that we're considering. But you see again, this aesthetic that is a little bit more a blend of modern and rural, and really honors that campus connection, but has those pitched roofs, has some of those more vertical windows that we saw in the hall facade.
All right, so as we move into the design modifications, we took a deeper dive into the existing conditions. So I think most have seen this plan before. So this is the existing Hall Memorial sort of site. The blue rectangles with the numbers are the topography, so you can see the grade changes from one side to the other. And then the yellow is the overall property line. So when we started looking at how this building went together on the existing site, so just to orient you, River Road is on the bottom of your screen, north is to the right. The yellow portion, kind of the bottom right of your screen, is the original existing building. This was documents that were provided to us, just analyzing some of the challenges and opportunities building on this existing site might present. And then you can see on the top or in the middle of the site, you see that there was already an existing trail established back then. And then there's a channel encroachment. So just some of the ideas of connecting the outdoor education and existing nature trails, I think are important one to keep as an overall theme. Now we start getting into the real technical components, which are extremely important when we start talking about building placement, whether it's a new building or a building addition and renovation to an existing structure. So starting from, I guess, left to right. So the original building, of course, is down located kind of in the center of the plan. The original beaching, according to the documents, the original leaching field sanitary system was shown in the blue here. And then when the addition came onto the building, there was another system that was installed that is currently exists. Basically 2/3 of that leaching galley are under the existing parking spaces towards the rear of the site. And then just off to the right, you'll see a cyan color, the existing stormwater line. The reason why we're bringing all this up is when you start looking at, how you can add, modify, and renovate either a building or a site, you need to look at these because these are important when you're considering the placement of the building. So, any questions on this plan? I know many have seen it already, but I do think it's important to communicate this level of detail, I think, to the community. It provides a backdrop as to why we did what we did. So this plan was the original concept that we had presented at our last building committee meeting. And then this plan is the revised concept. So what you'll notice on this plan, starting from left to right, is the cyan or blue colored dotted line is a 50-foot setback from what is believed to be an existing waterway. You can kind of see in the light blue there. So the building shifted, again, north is to the right, more or less. The building shifted to the right on your screen. So the orange block that you see there is basically the 3-story structure that we had explained at the last meeting. We moved it forward. And the white boxes that you see kind of towards the back end of the building. So again, this building is 1 story in the front and then kind of 3 stories in the back to take advantage of the topography. So those white boxes are basically future additional classrooms if they're ever needed. So that will give you expansion of 6 total classrooms. The other piece, and got a box on here on my screen. Okay. The other piece that you can see, and I'm not sure if the folks at home can see it as well, but in your printed version, the blue outline is the outline of the existing building, and then the yellow dotted lines are where the existing sanitary systems are. So you'll see that the site becomes a bit crowded when you start looking at, where can you put a building, where can you put parking? Because the concept is that you'll, for a new build on this existing site, you would want to build the building far enough away, have good separation from the existing occupants, and then basically build the building first, and then tear down the existing one and complete your site improvements.
Jeff, we'll just quickly talk about the red line too.
Sure.
Just nipping the corner of the building.
So the red line is basically a 100-foot setback. I think it's 100-foot. I'll have to check that. It looks a little further, but I believe it's a 100-foot setback. That is basically a upland review area. So we don't want to put buildings in there typically. Parking, play areas, site improvements are okay, but obviously it's an area that's under review, that has purview. So as you start to look at, and hopefully you can see my cursor. In fact, I will. So you can see the cyan color setback here, the reddish color setback here. You start the usable area of the property, starts to become a little bit more compressed than, if you're out there standing on the site, you think you have plenty of room and setbacks. But if you're starting to look at these I guess confinements or restrictions or setbacks, you start to impact the layout of the building. So the existing sanitary is there, in that yellow, etc. So a couple other things when you're thinking about the sequence of new construction is obviously, besides building the building, you want to build the parking, you want to build the utility, you want to build the utility infrastructure. So finding location for on-site septic sanitary can be a bit of a challenge. And we just completed the Madison project, albeit aesthetically different, had an on-site septic system, and wasn't necessarily the size of the leaching, it was the dilution of the pollutants and the distance away from water courses. So what that means in, I guess, simple terms, is that we put basically the leaching galley and the sanitary system up on a higher level and allowed it to leach and dilute by the time it made its natural course all the way, natural way to basically either of the 2 water courses on this site. So long story short is you have an A, B, and C option shown for what likely would be the septic/sanitary field. And then if the community is interested and wants to pursue geothermal for a building of this size, we are targeting around 80 to 90 wells. And that dotted line represents the area that would be required, 10-foot grid, offset grid. These wells are closed heads, they're 4 or 5 feet down. They're can go under parking. We don't put them under buildings because they're foundations, but we put them under parking quite often, so it's not unusual to look at areas under parking for this type of system. So you can see on this plan on your screen, you end up with basically one, we'll call it multi-purpose U15 soccer field, which is 60 by 110 yards. So some of the compromises, the benefits and concerns when you're looking at a building of this size, placing a new structure there is you're starting to get a little bit more confined and compromise a little bit on the green space related to the fields, overall fields. This is with the appetite of putting essentially 130, 140 parking spaces on this site so that we don't have to necessarily cross River Road and you avoid that existing condition that exists today.
I had a quick question before I move on. How deep did you say those geothermal wells would be?
How deep? I guess we typically do test wells during design, and then that yields a conductivity. You can go down 499 feet.
Okay, it seems to me that 28,000 to 35,000 per well is high. I have geothermal at my house. I had my well drilled 380 feet deep for $9,000.
We just completed 2 projects in Cheshire, and they were bid a year and a half ago. They came in out about 28,000 per well. That's the entire system. So that's the well, the pumping areas,
all the equipment,
all the equipment related to it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of factors here, so there's a pretty wide range. And that's why you do the test wells as a part of if the community is interested in this, that's why we would recommend this.
I'm sure the community would also be interested in in a cost comparison between geothermal and any fossil fuel system that we might use.
Yep. Absolutely.
So with on this design,
sure,
the pre-K kindergarten would be, if there's an exit would be out the back because it'd be on the lower level, right? Or who's on the lower level? Kindergarten, pre-K,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So with their short legs, how would they get up? If they have to, can't go back into the building, how would they get up in an emergency to get out? Via fire in the building at those entrances. And they're exiting out of the back. How do the firefighters get back there? How do the kids get out of there? I mean, it's pretty steep going from there up to around to the right, to the west.
It's no steeper than what exists out in the current building today.
And they could, and if there's an area, we'd have to look at it, but if there's an area big enough to get them away from the building, that's the key, is get them away from the building to a safe area. And then moving them up and out could happen safer later, when the fire trucks aren't all rushing into the parking lot and stuff.
Well, they're exiting out the back of the building.
Right, was they could stay down in that grass area.
Grass like rivers, doesn't look that far, you put the beat. Right?
To the left, we go to the left.
And right in the back.
It's not the river, that's the story.
That's the, again, you're in the spring, it's slow in the spring.
Yeah.
In the winter time, where are you going in the winter time? How are you gonna, where are they going in the winter? Like this winter, we had 3 feet of snow.
It's.
Who's gonna get back there to shovel that?
I mean, area refuge for the kids, the pond egress is a good point. I think fire department access, any of that stuff is gonna be developed as a part of.
I'm just looking at this concept, right?
Yeah, I agree, yeah. Those are all items that the design team is gonna be looking at as this project develops, obviously, in coordination with our local authorities, having jurisdiction, the fire departments, fire marshal, et cetera. I think the important part is this is a tight site.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean,
It has- it has-
it's something to look, I
it-
think
I
it's
agree.
something we have to, the
Yeah.
concept drawing, we have to look at.
I agree.
You know, we had 4 feet of snow this year. Who's gonna get back there to shovel?
Yeah.
How are you gonna get back there to snow blow?
Yeah, we need.
There's a lot of, how are you gonna do that? There's no sidewalks.
Yeah, there needs to be
I'm
that.
just-
So there would be, in a final design, there would be. some-
Yeah,
I
this
guess
is-
I would
this
need
is
that.
This is the design concept plan preliminary. But it's a good point, Jeremy.
So I think this is a good discussion because it illustrates that if we can push the building more towards the north or right on the screen, towards the center of the site. There's room to do that in the green area. If you pushed everything basically another 50 feet, you could get a loop road or a grass paved road, or you can get down there as far as it would be like an 8 to 10% slope to get down and around. But if you wanted a full 16, 18, 20 foot, drive aisle, you would have to kick the building over about that much. Because you could try to get some kind of access road in the setback, but we wouldn't recommend it. You would want to get the building to the north.
Yes. It has other ramifications, that there are other consequences and logistics around.
Getting very close to the existing building, the parking development, and some of the other aspects of the project.
Site.
You only have 2 of your 3 fields you need on this picture too.
Yes.
That's true.
That is correct. Yep.
There's no occupational savings. You're still transporting baseball.
Here.
Yep. Yeah, we did a couple overlays. You're not gonna get much more than that one field in there. I'm a little concerned, you still gotta get some of the underground utilities, those kinds of
Yep.
things, so that's gonna eat up some of the space. Yep. Any other questions on this? Okay, so I put in the floor plans just so you can see the arrangement, not much has changed there. When we go to the renovate as new, this was the scheme that we presented last time. And what I'd like to do is I'm gonna flip through these, just again, the building arrangement of classrooms wasn't modified all that much. But want to stop at this point, so. So now with the understanding of, we know where these existing utilities are on the site. The question is how do you put an addition to the building? How do you build an addition to the building? I don't know, is somebody raising their hand?
Come on.
Okay. So a renovate is new, needs an addition. It needs about a 30 to 40,000 square foot addition. That orange, so the blue is the existing, the orange is the addition. The addition could be 2 stories. It's not without complication because of all the different floor levels that when you connect to the building, there will be some inefficiencies, but that's probably the most efficient location to add that size of addition, that number of classrooms. So what you could do is, again, the scheme didn't really change that much. It's not, this again, just some of these. What we did from a site perspective is you could start looking at, a separate bus, separate parent if you wanted to. So have 2 points of entry off of River Road, whether it's one with separate traffic, and then this is an egress. We can look at that as well. But the orange is the addition, blue is the renovation, the pink or cyan color is, you can see the proposed possible septic. So we would have to put in this first, right? And I have a phasing plan we'll go over in a second. And then the geothermal field will be something of that size for this particular project. So you end up with a little less parking compared to the new option. You end up with 2 multi-purpose fields. There's items, and we talked about this during our working group, things like loading, are gonna be a challenge, things like utilities around the building, generator, if you want an all school generator. What we're trying to do, there's not a lot of green space around, this portion of the building, so we're trying to get some areas that are currently used as utilities and storage and sheds to be turned back to green space so that they have immediate access to the building itself. So the next slide was intended to get everyone started thinking about how we could actually pull this renovation off in an occupied building. So a phased occupied renovation. Not suggesting this is the only way you can do it, but it's a way. And it gives you kind of the flavor of what you would be looking at for sequencing, logistics, timing. So step one would be, and if you look at the screen, it kind of walks you through. Step one would be you would have to build a new septic and temporary parking, and target range would be 4 to 6 months. So obviously you need to do that first, because the second piece that you're going to want to do is build the new addition. That likely will take anywhere from 14 to 16 months. Could it be 12? Maybe. We're seeing things like switchgear panels, still with long lead times. So any kind of construction less than 14 months is very aggressive. So you would build the addition, and then the concept would be, then you would take the students that are in area 3, put them in the addition, and you would renovate while you renovate area 3, that blue area. So that would take anywhere from 10 to 12 months. Could it be 8? Could it be 14? Yes, but based on a recent phased occupied renovation that we did of a similar scale in Simsbury, I guess it was a little smaller. It was about 60,000 square feet. These timeframes are based on our experience there. So then you would then just cycle through the building, start picking away at the renovation of the gym and science areas, and then lastly go in and renovate the CAP and offices for another 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 months. And then, of course, you need to start tying the whole project back together. Once you're done with the building, you're going to have to remove the temporary parking, put in permanent parking. So it on this site, it's a bit of a logistical challenge. It can be done, but you'd be living through a project that would likely be somewhere between 40 and 48 months. Could it be a little less? Maybe. Could it be a little more? Yes, but this, I think, is a reasonable assessment to fully renovate a building.
And as we've talked about before, there really isn't any phase of this that you can do as a summer slammer. So you're going to be affecting school in session.
Yeah.
Right. And particularly phases 4 and 5 would be challenging to work around the operating school, because those are core operational facilities of the school.
Yeah.
So if you're renovating them, you still need to be using them, or at least walking through them. That's going to be like, the planning is going to have to be really careful around that, and you're just going to have some diminished services or
Yeah,
something.
there'll be some sacrifices. You might be able to do, a cafeteria or gym. We try to do the summer slammer projects. That's aggressive. It can be done. But you're looking at things like putting, like 4 classrooms in a gym temporarily while they're renovating another portion. So it's gonna be.
Yeah, I've done some summer slammers, and we had to pay extra to have crews working till late at night and on weekends to make it work.
Yep.
There's a challenge no matter what way you cut it. The other thing I would say is, and I've mentioned this a little before, is as we plan this out, we need to make sure we're talking about risk to schedule and risk to budget. Because particularly, again, phases 4 and 5, where you're working with the oldest, well, really 3, 4, and 5, where you're working with the existing building. More and more chance of surprises, contingency, schedule push out.
Yep.
Most likely in 5, because it's the oldest part of the school, and the walls are like 2 feet thick, concrete, and stone, and whatever else.
Based on enrollments, the data, you expect construction to, moving people around, do you expect portables to be required?
I don't think so, because you wouldn't bring the students from center school over until the end, so it should give you enough room in the swing space to not, that's where we can avoid using temporary portable classrooms, we do. That's why we would try to build the addition first, just to use that as our swing space. It's just, it ends up being the most economical approach to run a phased occupied renovations. It's not, we have used portables before, it's just, they're actually pretty expensive.
Yes, it is. The challenge is just getting fire protection to them.
Oh.
We
Yeah.
don't even have fire protection in the building.
Right.
So there's no pump, there's nothing, there's not even dedicated water main for fire.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's the problem. You can't just put the modulars up anymore. You need accessibility, you need fire protection, you need all the, it's.
Parent drop off. Oh, flu. Oh, this is killing me too. That's quite a walk for.
Yeah. Especially when the weather's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging.
There certainly can be modifications to this, like a site design to improve, relationships. It's just, we wanted to articulate and paint a picture of what it could look like.
Yeah,
just so everybody understands that.
I appreciate it because the logistics of what a phase renovation like this means is something that we all, I think, need to have a handle on.
Yeah.
It's also, this is clear in presenting, I think, a picture to the community as to what that potentially looks like. So.
And incoming fifth graders in the construction school through their entire middle school.
Yeah, they'll be.
In addition to presenting this to the public, I'd be interested to know relative costs between the building of a new building, the other approach and this approach. The public is going to need to know what those costs are. A lot of people are in favor of renovating Hall School, but if the cost is prohibitive, the state won't allow us to get our funding. If the cost is more than building new, correct?
Correct.
So yeah, it's important that we have costs to discuss with the public about this.
Yep. Yeah, we will be developing those costs. Again, we've been kind of waiting till the concept plans got to a level of development, that gave us, anticipated building areas and so forth. So I think we're very close to starting to develop those high level estimates.
Great, thank you.
There's also still an issue with trash pickup.
Oh, yeah. The logistics are.
Yeah, I didn't make that turn for the truck.
Yep, and again, I think we can make some modifications to this to improve those situations. I think the initial reaction was to try to get more green space next to that addition just because of the occupants, proposed occupants.
Yep.
The last few slides, if I know we'll get later, so we'll summarize, I would consider them a first draft of our a session of brainstorming, 3 options at the moment as far as the context of scope. Break fix, which is, fix it as you go, fix repair on a yearly basis, which, over whatever, 25, 30, pick your time frame. There's the renovate as new, which is, somewhere in that 48-month time frame, and then the new construction we think it's around 24 months, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. It's not going to be as clean as just a ground up new construction, so there's some time.
I will say, just since the public is listening in on the new, it's approximately 24 months to build the new. We can't stop using the existing school or raise the existing school until the new is open and operational. And depending on the environmental concerns, again, site logistics, safety, it's probably going to be somewhere 8 to 12 months to raise that building and then clear that area and turn it into a field. So, there will be, and again, that's when we're going to be developing schedules specific to each one of these options. But it won't just be necessarily to correct the construction of the building, but it'd also be site restoration and everything that follows that for these. So I want everybody to think that can get done in 2 years. The 2 years is for the building itself. get the new building operational, then we're gonna have to follow up and raise the existing building.
2 years for occupancy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, typically 18 months, but on such a tight site with limited logistics laid down, the complexities of working on the existing site, I think 2 years is realistic, maybe a little less than that.
Making sure it's
yeah.
safe and secure for students.
Yeah. So again, we set up this matrix and it's considered a draft, the benefits on the challenges on the bottom. And, you know, we've to start identified some pretty basic ones, right? So break fix, lowest immediate cost allows for phased improvements over time and you can prioritize, right? So those are the advantages of the break fix. Some of the concerns or things that you should be thinking about are you're still gonna have some aging infrastructure as you fix year to year over a period of years. You risk the failure of systems. I lived this with my own students in my hometown where they had to cancel school because they couldn't get an electrical panel because the building was so old. So things like that come into play. Code and deficiencies. We're not typically addressing any kind of quality of educational space in break fix. And then this is a fact, you're going to get less reimbursement if you pay as you go. And that's the very reason why when communities are looking at buildings of this magnitude, they look at these options. Renovate is new. So renovate is new, obvious, consolidates to one school, upgrades the infrastructure, improves the educational space, and leverages the existing building and the historical connection. And then the renovation challenges or items that need to be thought about are the limitations become embedded for the long term, right? So the inefficiencies. We went over the phasing complexity. If there's options to improve that, we certainly can, but it's going to be more complex than other options to consider. Likely less efficient, more hidden risks, and we'll get into that in a moment. And maybe some compromise if it's new. You can get optimal reimbursement. Obviously, it's a clean slate. Eliminates deferred maintenance. These are pretty obvious ones when you start looking at it across the board. But some of the challenges are site capacity, like we talked about, right? That's an obvious one. Site phasing is going to be a challenge, and then there's the fact that there's a potential loss of a historic structure, and then what do you do with a discarded structure or one that's going to be not used? So these are, I will put them in the things to think about on the benefit side and on the challenge side. The last slide, again, so draft. And what we want to start thinking about, and I've heard a lot of it. I understand the community has concerns overall about a variety of different topics or has questions. One of the things that I think is important to think about long term is if you are pursuing reimbursement, where is the true value in the building? So what I want to make sure either path is great, or all three paths are, whatever the community decides is what they decide is best for them. But when you're looking at new on the right-hand side and renovated on the left-hand side, some of the very real challenges that exist are predictability. So right, wrong, or indifferent, when you open something that you don't know how it was constructed, or it was constructed 100+ years ago, there's going to be more unforeseen conditions than in a new construction. That's fact. So what those ranges are, you can pick those ranges and compare the two. The next piece is basically tied to length of construction. And once we hone in on actual costs, and once we hone in on refined schedules, we'll modify this. But you're obviously paying general conditions. So it's something that doesn't stay in the building. It's general conditions that for people basically that are on site building these buildings, you're paying twice as much, or you're paying for them to be there twice as long in a renovation. Similarly, project requirements, there's things like temporary walls, insurances, Those are cost components that don't stay in the building. And the last one, which I think is important, and once we fine tune the schedules, you really need to start thinking about the cost escalation comparison. Because the state's gonna make you go to the midpoint of construction for any project that you do. And all you have to do is take that delta and see where you're paying, where that money comes from. Is there a concern? Oh, okay, basically, okay. Any questions on this slide?
No, I like it. I think, before we finalize it, I would maybe just think about a couple of very slight changes graphically.
Sure.
And my only thing for me, maybe it doesn't matter to anyone else, is on the very left and right columns where you have like the 5 years versus 3 years on the outer sides of the page there.
Yep.
If those were moved inboard in between the bucket and the writing, then it would be clearer that those line up. You know, the 5 years lines up with escalation, the 2.4 million lines up with project requirements.
Yep.
And then it puts the comparisons almost side by side.
Yep.
I just think it might be a little easier graphically to understand what those things are telling us, but that's it. I mean, it's exactly the kind of thing we need.
Yep.
To bring these things out.
That's a good suggestion, yeah, thank you. Any other comments?
No, I mean, so what I'm saying is if you were to invest the same amount into either project, you're basically you're spending for renovate to new. You're getting less of those dollars invested in the actual improvement of the educational system or educational program. Less of that dollar value being invested into our students and into the community's structure as opposed to project requirements and escalation and unforeseen. And it's a lot when you're talking about us trying to be efficient in developing a project that's an efficient use of tax dollars. I want to see as much of that go towards the project and towards the benefit of the community and the student body as possible. And I don't know where this tracks out, as you know, we'll figure that out as we develop project budgets, but it's something that's we have to be accountable for every dollar. And it can't be more important.
So, you're gonna back into this of our dollars, our educational specification.
Yeah, if we're spending money, just an escalation and overhead, that's because the project, that's less funding.
Right.
In a project budget.
That's less that's in the building.
That's improving the building, improving the educational experience for the town. So.
Yeah, I think as you go through this process, there's gonna be benefits that you'll pick up, efficiencies on each of the options.
Yeah.
These are elements that would be applied to any project. So where you find those efficiencies in your plans and each of those options is really where that delta is gonna be made up.
I think we also have the operating costs, carrying costs going forward. Too.
That's
one, what's the burden tax burden gonna be on what going forward?
Yeah, particularly if you end up, if you're talking about a time frame difference of 2 school years. You could potentially start like that factors into all of this money conversation, right? If you get efficiencies in your staffing and all that 2 years sooner.
Yeah, now the budgets we put together won't take that into account, but we'll.
No, but
we'll
that's
work that into the mix.
Once we
Right.
see how the budget and the schedules work out, that's an easy number for this committee.
Right, that becomes
Yeah,
our
we'll-
job.
Right.
Yeah, we'll assist in making sure that that's evaluated when you look at mill rate impact
Yeah.
and other things,
I think so.
working with the town's finance.
That's it for this section of the agenda.
Thank you, both, you and your thing. I think this starts to build a discussion with the community that I'm really looking forward to advancing with them as we get to that process. So what, segueing off of this, what do you need from us for next steps? Obviously, rough order of magnitude budgets are coming up, as the next component. What helps us as a committee advance your work from this point into our next meeting and the meeting after that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think, you know, the two concepts, I think at this point are well defined. I would say, as far as the last page goes, I think it would be important, especially understanding the community, is assisting in the community, the building committee members, starting to develop, in your opinion, what the pros and cons are of these. Because I think as you start putting those on the list, it's gonna help you start to understand, digest these concepts a little bit more, and then we can take your thoughts and expand on the, you know, the group's feeling on what some of the advantages and disadvantages are. And then, you know, like I said, we'll put together, you know, our initial timelines based on the information that Jeff's given us, review that with you all, tie that into project budgets, review that as a group, and then, you know, determine if we feel that, they're resolved to a point where, you know, sooner than later, we can start letting those numbers out to the community. We want to make sure we vet those numbers as a team before really look at pros, cons, look at the schedules. What we really feel, you know, is an accurate depiction of what we think these projects will be while we develop those budgets.
Yeah, the last thing we need is changing variables or changing.
Yeah, that is difficult for the committee and for the public if we have too many variables, definitely. I think another thing too, that we will obviously work very carefully to determine local tax impact. That's one of the most critical questions that I hear from the public is what will this actually mean to me? But I think we don't want to lose sight also of the fact that it's all taxpayer money. And assuming every one of us in this room lives in Connecticut, I know most of us do anyway, we're paying whatever the reimbursement amount is gonna be. We're paying for it already. We're putting that money, we've been putting that money into that pot for years in our income taxes and sales taxes and all that other stuff. That is taxpayer money. That is our, if you will, it's our money. And so we also want to make the best use of that, you know, and be sort of practical about that. And if we do it right, we do the most efficient job of getting a bunch of our money back into Willington, because it's gonna go in someone's school. Whatever I bought the other day at the grocery store or whatever, wherever I bought something with sales tax, and when I just paid my income tax a couple of weeks ago, that money is going to somebody's school. Good point.
All right, any other questions for TechCom on design options?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So that was very, very helpful to hear. I'm just trying to process the options, and the way I see it is that with the renovate as new comes with more risk, more money, and more time, which are, I don't know, probably the largest driving factors in making these decisions. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing something. I mean, I know some towns do this, but why would they do it? I mean, is it really just that, like, if you have such a land constraint, you would do this? I mean, why? I just want to make sure I'm not missing this. Why do some towns go with that option?
You're right in the standpoint that there may not be available land to build a new school. And in some cases, depending on the age of the building, you're talking about a building that's 100 years old. There's buildings that were built in the 70s and 80s. We're looking at some buildings right now in Hartford that were actually built in the 90s that Hartford wants to renovate as new. They were designed to much. The existing classrooms are larger. There's more natural light, much better bones. So every community, every building is different. So you evaluate the bones, you evaluate what the final product's going to be, how that meets your ed spec, and it may be cheaper to renovate than build a brand new building.
Okay, now that's very helpful. And actually that is kind of related to another thought I had when I was listening to the presentation, that the When you put up the three options, and the first one was to kind of fix as you go, I remember thinking to myself, because it was on the time frame of like 0 to 25 years or something, and I was thinking to myself, well, just how long can you actually like repair a building that's already 100 years old? And I think for the community, it'll be important to understand that renovate to new might be very applicable to a building that was built in the 90s, but if it's 100 years old, I don't even know. Can you just keep repairing a building indefinitely for 100+ years?
Not in an economical way.
Right, correct. We renovate historic buildings all the time, but they're major capital and, renovations. They're huge. It's from all your reinforcing structure, you're doing all new mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. You're bringing the exterior skins up to as much of code these days that you our values and windows and roofing systems. It's major. I mean, we do it all the time.
These tower pieces go around, they've dumped a lot of money into that.
It's still leaning.
It's still leaning.
Lisa, a comment
Okay.
from Ann. We're finding now with our bathrooms that they're unable to get the parts. So you
Oh.
run into that too.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. It was all very helpful to hear.
There. All right. In the interest of time, guys, I think we have a lot. We're obviously going to have a lot more to discuss on these over the weeks to come, but I'd like to get into our next agenda item. Before I lose Adam.
Right, it's quick.
Everybody okay with that? All right. So I'll let the more experienced administrators in the room correct me, but I am going to make our next item is executive session. So I'm going to move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-210B-7, in part, the contents of real estate appraisals, engineering, or feasibility estimates and evaluations made for or by an agency relative to the acquisition of property, and inviting various parties pertinent to the matters pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-231A to discuss potential site selection and phase 1 environmental issues and potential surveys for new site considerations for the project. And I would like to invite in the team from Tecton Architects, as well as Scott from Collier's Project Leaders. Do I need to invite Lisa, or does she have to step out for this thing? Lisa would step out. Thank you. So that was a motion. Well, do I have a second?
I have a second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Yeah, this is just to evaluate potential what you already property evaluation. Okay, so all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
John?
All right.
Here we go. All right, that is unanimous. So with that said, thank you guys for attending. I am gonna ask you guys to leave the room while we enter into the executive sessions. Lisa, we need to pause the recording and move everybody up. Thank you, everybody. When we come back. All right, just noting for the record, we have exited executive session at 10:02 p.m. There are no actions or motions following executive session. So next up on our agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll call a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Got that? All right. I'm not even gonna offer discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much, everybody online. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 10:02 p.m.
Okay. See you, gang.
Good night.
Jim, I think I may have mentioned it the other day at the meeting, but